Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, but he is out today. Filling in for him, Whitney Washington. You can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text at the same number. Send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact, or hang out with us in the chat on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, all at the Valley Labor Report. We got a bunch of stuff to get to today, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Huntsville Hospital named, as reported by 256 Today and Way 31, Huntsville Hospital named as Newsweek's one of America's greatest workplaces in healthcare. And so some of the stuff that, the articles talk about, like, they kind of give some information about Huntsville Hospital, how many beds they have, how many employees they have, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. You all know that. But you all also know that the Labor Council has been, engaging in, the Labor Council, the Regional Federation of Unions, has been engaging in, trying to put a megaphone to the community's concerns about the consolidation of healthcare in Huntsville and North Alabama more broadly. And so when I saw that seemed to me to be a little bit discordant with my view of what it is like to work at Huntsville Hospital. I also want to point out, I tried to look through these rankings and look at the methodologies and stuff, and they say that they're based on interview, so they do, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of these employers that they have named in various sectors as some of America's greatest workplaces, and in their methodology that says that they're based on 1,000 interviews or something, and I'm surely it's not 1,000 interviews at Huntsville Hospital. I think it's 1,000 interviews across the whole country, and so how does that play into, if you get 1,000 interviews, how do you even I don't know. I was not super impressed by exactly what they were doing, and they didn't make it super clear exactly how they came to this stuff. And they also put at the end of it, which I thought was interesting, that they do not endorse, that the consulting group who did these rankings, Plant A, does not endorse nor validate the business practices or the standing of the ranked companies. The inclusion or exclusion of any company in the ranking should not be used as a basis for investment, business, or other decisions. All decisions based on any information presented in the ranking should be made in conjunction with other available information and independent advice. The rankings are based on, information from the last 24 months, and they, don't include, so they're trying to, hedge a little bit here, which I thought was interesting. But when I saw this, the first place that I saw it was on Facebook on 256 Today's post about it, and it seems like I was not the only one who was surprised by that this was supposedly one of the best places to work. One person says, LMAO, as an employee, I'd really like to know how Newsweek came to this conclusion. Another person says, I really don't know how most people employed here can afford to live. Somebody exclaimed, what employees completed that survey? Somebody else says, does Huntsville Hospital also own Newsweek? How much did they bribe you to write this? Never was the eye roll emoji needed more for a reaction. I guess somebody forgot to tell me this is April Fool's Day. That's not what the employees say. These surveys get filled out by the administration. What was this based on? And here somebody else says that they said, I think the public should know that Huntsville Hospital only matched a maximum of 120 hours of Crestwood employees' extended illness bank hours after the acquisition. Loyal employees who had been there for 10, 20, 30 years had accrued from 480 to 800 hours in their extended illness banks. Crestwood separated paid time off from extended illness, while Huntsville Hospital has one bank, simply paid time off. And many of us who had accrued a lot of time in our extended illness banks no longer needed short-term disability, and now we have to buy that too. We felt robbed, and as many of us age and develop inevitable health issues, now we get the added stress of financial concerns. So, I'm not kind of cherry picking there. I just picked, those were all right in order. Now there's literally one or two. There's one person who says, I've worked at 5 hospitals as an RN over the last 32 years. I'm proud to work at Huntsville Hospital, Maine, and wish I had started my career there. And I think, one of the other times when I was going through, there was one other person that said something positive about Huntsville Hospital, but lots of people very surprised, including people who seem to be purporting to be employees at Huntsville Hospital, very surprised by the ranking that they got from Newsweek. And so if you're a worker at Huntsville Hospital, I would love to hear from you. 844-899-TVLR. We'll go ahead and open the phones in case anybody happens to be listening that works at Huntsville Hospital now and you'd like to call in, 844-899-TVLR. But that number is always open for texts and voicemails. So if you're hearing this while it's not live, then you can, let us know what you think about Huntsville Hospital being named one of America's greatest workplaces in healthcare in the country. Even though, so I just went through kind of individual reactions to it. Also worth noting, one of the things that we uncovered during our, our engagement on the acquisition issue is that RNs in Huntsville, registered nurses in Huntsville, they have a lower median wage than RNs in every single other metropolitan area in the United States except for 9, and 6 of those are in Puerto Rico, right? So there are only 3 metropolitan areas in the entire United States, the states, if you exclude the territories, only 3 other metro areas where RNs have a lower median wage than Huntsville. And now look, we put that to Huntsville Hospital, and one of the things that they said is that, we're not the only people that employs RNs in Huntsville. There are some like nurses' offices and stuff, and it's worth noting also that, doctors' offices, it's worth noting also, lots of doctors' offices are owned by Huntsville Hospital, including the one that I go to. It's a Huntsville Hospital physician care owned place, so my doctor is, owned by Huntsville Hospital. And he hires RNs, she now, he just retired. She hires RNs. And so I don't know exactly if they're counting that or not, but they did say at a city council meeting that they employ, if I'm remembering, it's something like 55 or 60% of all RNs in Huntsville. So, look, yes, it's true that you're not literally the only employer of RNs in Huntsville. But there are, you're the biggest one, and so obviously yours are going to play the largest into, the general wage statistics in the city of Huntsville. So yeah, those are some of my initial reactions. Whitney, like I said, also filling in for Adam here today. What were some of your thoughts when you saw this?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. Like you said, we did some organizing on this earlier this year when Huntsville Hospital bought up its final competition in Huntsville Crestwood Medical Center, and we talked to patients, we talked to healthcare workers, and Huntsville Hospital does offer great healthcare, but it's not great that it's the only option now. And so that's not just in Huntsville. Huntsville Hospital makes it sound like it's just like a quaint local hospital, but Huntsville Hospital Health System is basically responsible for all of the hospitals operating in the top 15 counties in Alabama. So they really have a monopoly on healthcare. Like you said, they employ about 60% of nurses in the area, and they operate all of the hospitals, and then not only hospitals, but like maternal healthcare centers, imaging centers, radiology, like cancer centers, dialysis centers, all of those other elements of hospitals. So I think the full number of their employees is like closer to 20,000 than 11,000 when you sort of factor in all of those figures. So it's a very like massive machine. And yeah, we heard that from the get-go that nurses, when they were absorbing Crestwood, were worried about getting paid less. And it seems like that has proven to be true, if not like in, net pay, then in their benefits, they're sort of getting the short end of the deal. So yeah, I would encourage, like Jacob said, if you or someone works at Huntsville Hospital, feel free to call into the show today, but also reach out to contact@northalabama.labor.org if you have anything you want to share about working at Huntsville Hospital. Because yeah, there's a lot there. We need to protect our nurses and make sure that they are being treated fairly. This impacts literally everyone in North Alabama, because eventually, like, you cannot go to a healthcare provider and not bump into Huntsville Hospital. So we need them to be operating in the best faith possible.
The thing about taking away the accrued sick leave from people who, if you've been able to accrue 400, 800 hours of sick leave, then definitionally you have been working at this one place for decades. And so the idea that you're going to strip that from somebody in an acquisition just because you can is really gross. It would not have, we're talking about, how much was the acquisition again? It was like $400 million or something
like that, yeah.
$500 million. It cannot have cost that much more, because there's probably not that many people who had 400, 800 hours of sick leave banked up. I mean, there just can't have been that many people. And so they easily could have, tacked on another few $1 million, and bada bing, bada boom, you are able to give these people their benefits that they have earned from working in being loyal to one institution for decades. That should have been honored, and it's really gross that it wasn't. We talked to somebody just a couple of weeks ago who was, workers are on strike in Texas, and that's a big issue for them, is that they are trying to take away their leave banks for, they've worked at this place just like at Crestwood. They had worked at Ashland Specialty Chemicals for decades, and they had been able to accumulate a couple of hundred hours of sick leave, and now they want to, in this next contract, take that away and only give them 48 hours, like that be the cap of sick leave that they can keep. And it's just like doing stuff like that is just so gross.
Well, and I think the thing with Huntsville Hospital specifically is that they have not really operated in full transparency. They've closed their board meetings. They announced that this deal was happening with Crestwood basically less than 60 days before it was going to close.
Yeah.
And then they did not disclose any of the details because they said they had signed an NDA, including to lawmakers. They wouldn't give information about this deal to lawmakers. And perhaps had they operated in transparency, the workers could have had a chance to ask these questions and advocate for themselves to prevent this from happening. Because now, as we stated, these nurses that have accrued all this time, like, they are stuck in the Huntsville Hospital system.
Yeah. Union Gus says in the YouTube chat, these best of lists are notoriously whack. Despite the union difference of pay, I was reading about how they disproportionately represent non-union employers. And then again, a couple of things that could be happening on the issue that I mentioned. And I agree that, I think these like best of lists are, a lot of times they're kind of, they're kind of weird. They did one of the things. Well, I read that's what I was about to mention. I read in their like disclaimer fine print that we do not pay to play. We absolutely do not take any money from anybody on this list. And so, That's what they're saying at the very least.
Yeah, like
some of them are pay to play, but this one they say is not.
I think the fact that Huntsville, like as a city, has been like on the top of these best places to live list multiple times indicates that these lists are not accurate.
Well, look, I like living in Huntsville, so
I'm sure. Yeah, it's lovely.
These lists are tailored just to me, to Jacob Morrison. Like, where would Jacob like to live?
Favorite places: Huntsville, Huntsville Hospital.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. It is funny that I am like kind of a public antagonist of Huntsville Hospital, but I get basically literally all of my health care from Huntsville Hospital, and I always have. Okay, so there's a strike going on right now in Jackson, Mississippi, where bus drivers have been on strike for a couple of weeks now, and we have on the president of the union, the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1208, Brother Charles Torrens Jr. President Torrens, welcome to the program. I think you're muted, if you can hear me. I'm still not hearing him. Well.
What my mic is?
Okay, here we go. I can hear you now. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. We'll start over. President Torrens, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Can you talk a little bit about the members that you represent in Jackson, Mississippi? What do they do for folks there?
Well, they're hardworking men and women who work J-Train transit system every day. They're dedicated to their work. They're professional. They're skilled. We have bus operators. We have mechanics. We have customer service, dispatchers, cleaners, and utility workers, all form the union on the property of J-Train.
And y'all been in the middle of contract negotiations. I think that you're heading into mediation right now, still on strike. As y'all were conducting negotiations, what was some of the sticking points? Like what were some of the barriers between where y'all are at and getting a fair contract?
Absolutely. Yeah, we want a fair, competitive wage. We want safe working conditions, and we want to be treated fairly with dignity and respect. And MV has failed to meet those concerns. And as a result, we're not at a stall, and we took their last proposal to the memberships, and the membership voted on that last proposal that MV presented to us, and they rejected it. And so, with that being said, we offered a 30-day strike notice, and it dwindled down to the last day. And of course, nothing happened, no movement from MV Transportation whatsoever, and it resulted as a strike, which is day 12, count today, day 12.
Okay, so almost 2 weeks then. It's a big decision to strike. Why were members willing to vote down the contract offer from the company?
Well, of course, no member wants to go on strike. No union wants to go on strike. It was a last result. And like I said, there's things that were proposed to us that, it just didn't address our concerns. And it fell way short of expectation of the wages that we require. We've tried to get competitive with other transit industries. Also, the aggressiveness and disciplinary actions that MV Transportation has been handing out since they took over the contract for the city of Jackson and other areas of language that they have proposed. The membership just, didn't feel like it was fair, and they voted. And until they give us a fair contract and treat us with respect and dignity, we're going to be on the strike line. But it's not anything that we take lightly. We are willing to get back to the table, but right now, it's not a path forward unless they want to come to the table and bargain fairly with us.
MV Transportation is the company that you're negotiating with. They are the private transit operator for Jackson, Mississippi. So, the government contracts with these private contractors. And so MV Transportation is not just in Jackson, Mississippi. They're a nationwide company. And my understanding is that they are paying y'all less than what than what workers in similar occupations make for the same company in other places, right?
Right. Well, they brought in what we call scab drivers, replacement drivers, and they're paying them anywhere from $35 to $50 an hour, and putting them up in hotels and paying them per diem. Also providing 3 square meals for them and
Wow.
travel expense. And hey, they're not treating us the same way. It's like a double jeopardy, slap in the face to us. That those monies that they're issuing out daily. Hey, I'm sure it amounts up quickly, and that could have been geared toward the wage that proposal that we desire to have.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that companies during strikes want to try to do is to just basically wait you out to make it, allow y'all to strike and kind of wear yourselves out and get to a point where financially it becomes very difficult for workers to sustain the strike. But your International has really stepped up in a big way. And if I'm reading this right from Fox 40 in Jackson, Mississippi, they doubled your strike fund.
Absolutely. Our international president, Costa, was on the ground the first day of the strike, and other affiliates as well, in an effort to support us physically as well as financially, and double the strike fund. And we also have a strike fund where other locals and affiliates can contribute. And that has enabled us to maintain the strike line. And that's what's taking place right now. Our members are well taken care of, and we were grateful for all those that have contributed and will be contributing in the future to this effort.
You've been on strike for, as you said, almost 2 weeks now, 12 days. How are members feeling?
They're still motivated. Hey, I believe this strike has brought us closer together in solidarity, and they know what's at stake. If we stand together, we believe we'll win together. And they know throughout history, there have been civil rights movement, there have been labor movements, and all these things are necessary, just like what we're doing today. They're necessary to get to what we have, what we need, what we think we need, and where we need to be in a fair contract and better working conditions for the citizens of Jackson. So they're committed and they're willing to stand.
You mentioned that MV Transportation is maintaining, or it has brought in scabs. Are they maintaining all of the routes now, or is it like 50% operate, or do you have visibility on that?
Well, the routes are greatly impacted. It's just not enough to have a person in a seat saying that you are doing the service. We present ATU Local 1208 members. We present professionalism, experience. Of course, we know the city, and we have had reports where the service is not on-time service because of these scabs that are behind the wheel. We just want to get back to the table and do our job that we do well and have committed our life to, so we can take care of the citizens of Jackson and also present them with a safe working environment as well as professionalism.
You mentioned the training and the high quality of job that your members do, knowing the city and stuff like that. And ATU, one of the big sticking points in other ATU negotiations, I'm thinking specifically, I think it's Dallas in Texas against Keolis. Right. They're having a really difficult time getting the company to agree to good union standard training. Is that an issue for y'all in Jackson too? Or is, have y'all been able, are y'all kind of where you need to be on the training issue?
Well, we always welcome more training. More training is essential to job performance and the safety of what we do every day, not just for bus operators, but all across the board. they're not up to snuff. Where if I can say that, where training is should be given out to all the members. We have safety meetings, of course, but those are not consistent, like safety management meetings and so forth, where the local and management is on the same team. It's not consistent. It could be better. I say that.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that the service has been deteriorated since the scabs have come in and they're doing the driving, and no doubt, the lack of access to buses, the lack of them being on time and things like that can start to impact the community. And so I'm wondering how the community has been reacting to the strike so far. Have they been supportive of your members?
The citizens of Jackson that utilize the public service. They're very supportive of us. We've had some to come on our strike line daily and say, "Hey, we miss you guys, and hey, we just don't feel safe with these scab drivers that the MV has brought in, and it's making an impact, and they're not able to get where they need to go in a timely manner." So we have an outpour of support from the citizens. Many of them come through and tell us. Sometimes some will even our members would get phone calls because, hey, we've driven these buses and worked on these buses for a long time, and some of these riders have become friends and just like family, and they express their concern and they're fighting with us, and it lets us know, listen, that we're not standing alone. We have others that are fighting alongside us, and we appreciate that. And that's what we want to do. We want to get back to the table, get a fair contract, so we can do what we do every day to get serving the people of Jackson and moving the city of Jackson.
I'm really glad to hear that the community has been supporting y'all's strike. It doesn't seem like you're getting support or the support that I would want to see from a city council, because the city has just waived requirements for drivers to hold a commercial driver's license for scabs during the strike. That seems like a bad idea to me.
Right. Well, actually, the second day of the strike, myself and members of ATU Local 1208, hey, we went down and I got on the agenda to speak to the city council. The mayor was out of town, I was told, in New York City somewhere. And I spoke to the city council that were present, the men and women there. And I spoke to that contingency plan. And we allowed them to know that, hey, we was disrespected with that because, hey, when you allow those scab drivers to come in and you waive a CDL requirements, it was a slap in our face. Hey, we've been working a long time serving the public and citizens of Jackson, and to allow somebody that's not professional to get behind those wheels presents a potential liability as well as safety concerns. And we asked them to stand behind us and help us because, hey, we have been the driving force and been doing it faithfully. And we asked for that support from the council men and women. But, hey, so far, none have responded. None have been down to our strike line. There have been no support from the city of Jackson whatsoever.
That is just so disappointing. And Jackson, I mean, supposedly, overwhelmingly a Democratic city, right? I mean, Democrats are supposed to support working people, is my understanding.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. However, it's been like something unbelievable.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have never thought that they would allow such to take place. Like the first strike that took place in 24, no buses moved, even though at the end of the 14-day strike in 24. Those scabs were brought in, they more or less just stood around. They did not do any type of service. Comparing it to this time, they allow them to get behind the wheel.
President Torrens, I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the conversation. We've got about 15 seconds left. Where can people donate to your strike fund?
Okay, we have a Facebook ATU site. They can contribute to that if they will go to ATU, stands for Amalgamated Transit Union. And we have a strike fund set up there where they can contribute to this effort and give to us. And I want to take time to just thank each and every person that has given to us already, and want to encourage others to do so as well, because listen, when we stand together, anything is possible. We need that support, and we greatly appreciate those that stand with us. But it's going to be that ATU site that can contribute in that way.
Charles Torrance, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks, from the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, filling in today, Whitney Washington. Today on the program, we just talked to the president of an amalgamated transit union, Local 1208 in Jackson, Mississippi, about their strike. We also talked about Huntsville Hospital being named one of the greatest workplaces in America. Soon we'll be talking to Beau Hawk, candidate for Knox County mayor, and talking to some therapists about how they beat union busters. All that and more on today's program. If you want to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send a text message to that number. You can send a voicemail to that number at any time. You can send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact at any time. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. A huge portion of our funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We also have a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, you should get your local, your district, your region, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that. I will also add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain for new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. These are some of the stories that we could find from July 17th to the 25th. This is Last Week in Southern Labor. Over the last week, 140 workers in 8 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 118 workers across 2 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. 127 workers across 3 bargaining units organized their unions, voted in favor of unionization, and 116 workers across 3 bargaining units voted against unionization. Here are the details. In new union campaigns, 6 workers at Service Electric Company in Chattanooga, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 175. 6 workers at AGL Services Company in Atlanta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW Local 1997. 8 workers at Nickel Electric Company in Greenwood, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW Local 124. 5 workers at Rusk County Electric Cooperative in Henderson, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW Local 738. Linemen and lineman apprentices just unionized at that same company with the same local last week. Looks like now the service techs and the mechanics want in on the action. The employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 7 workers at Woodard and Curran in Defiance, Missouri, demonstrated support for unionization with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 148. 85 workers at Ash Grove in Midlothian, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, IBB. In election results, 2 workers at the Zeigenfelder Company in Wheeling, West Virginia, withdrew their petition with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, IUPAT, District Council 53. 95 workers at MV Transportation in Cary, North Carolina, voted 31-4 in favor of unionization with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Local 1328. 16 workers at Pye Barker Fire and Safety in Schertz, Texas, withdrew their petition with the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, UA's Road Sprinkler Fitters Local 669. 19 workers at Starbucks in Little Rock, Arkansas voted against unionization with Starbucks Workers United. 17 workers at a location in Bowling Green, Kentucky, however, voted 11-3 in favor of unionization. 15 workers at Watson Clinic in Lakeland, Florida, voted 8-2 in favor of unionization with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW Local 1625. 70 workers at Quick Creek Construction Materials in Newberry, Florida, voted against unionization with the United Steelworkers, USW, and 27 workers at Johnson Brothers Maverick in Irving, Texas, voted against unionization with the Teamsters Local 745. In strikes and bargaining, a 45% raise. That's what workers at New Flyer NFI Parts in Louisville, Kentucky just ratified in their first collective bargaining agreement, among other things. Their union, the Industrial Department of the Communication Workers of America, IUE-CWA, said they also won 100% employer-paid dental and vision insurance, guardrails against unexpected healthcare premium hikes, paid maternity leave for the first time, and more. The union says this came after a long and hard fight at the bargaining table where management provided incorrect information and denied issues that workers faced on the shop floor, while ramping up what appeared to be a retaliation campaign against workers by installing surveillance equipment and issuing more write-ups than normal. They fought back by demonstrating their solidarity through petitions, showing their union support, and through regular communication from the bargaining team. In political and legislative updates, the Trump administration is continuing its killing of coal miners. That's the result of his continued delay in implementing a new safety rule meant to curtail the significant increase in the rates of black lung among coal miners. The new rule would have limited the amount of silica dust that could be in the air in a coal mine to the same amount that can be in the air in other workplaces. And yes, that's right. We have known that silica dust can cause black lung for long enough that workers in other industries that can be exposed to silica, like construction and manufacturing, already have protections. But coal miners have been working with double the exposure to the life-threatening dust particles. The rule was implemented by the Biden administration in 2024, but immediately challenged in the courts by employers who want to be able to slowly suffocate their workers to death. Amazingly, the courts won't even let the United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, be a party to the suit, even though their members are exactly the people most affected by the rule or lack thereof. The union has more about their fight to protect their members from black lung and how the Trump administration has been fighting for mine bosses on their website. We've got about twice the amount of wildfires so far this year, and Trump wants to cut a key agency responsible for fighting those fires, the U.S. Forest Service. The National Federation of Federal Employees, NFI-IAM, the union that represents most federal firefighters on public lands, is fighting back against those cuts. Trump is proposing a full 24% cut to the U.S. Forest Service and has already pushed out nearly 6,000 workers. In addition to the proposed cuts and the attacks on workers, they are planning a major reorganization which could force another 6,500 workers to relocate or quit. And according to an internal union survey, 93% of those workers would not relocate if that choice was forced on them. At a rally outside Congress, Genny Kotick, president of NFI's Forest Service Council, said that this would be devastating for our country and the people who depend on these public lands. The union is calling on Congress to reject the proposed cuts and to protect the staffing, research, and operational resources needed to safeguard public lands, support frontline firefighters, and strengthen the nation's wildfire response capabilities. This rally came shortly after the union won against the agency in arbitration over telework for employees at the Forest Service who are eligible. The arbitrator ruled that the agency had violated both federal law, the Telework Enhancement Act of 2010, and their collective bargaining agreement, and is ordering the agency to restore the contract and with the union and provide workers with the same telework and remote work options they had before. The agency may still appeal the ruling. If we missed something, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and you can subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm and get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor in your inbox every single week. Up next, we are going to be talking to Beau Hawk, candidate for Knox County Mayor, also president of the Knoxville Oak Ridge Central Labor Council, representative of the Knoxville Building Trades Council, and member of the Iron Workers, Local 384. Beau, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back on.
Really excited to have you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Beau. So we don't have county mayors in Alabama. Could you just tell us a little bit about what exactly a county mayor does and how it differs from like a city mayor?
Yeah, so a lot of places will call it like a county executive. Here it's a county mayor, but so with our Knoxville City Council, it's more of a strong mayor system where the mayor chairs the city council meetings and has a lot more power to kind of unilaterally do things. But the county mayor does not share the county commission. The commission itself is it has a lot of independent authority. But as the county mayor, you're setting priorities and trying to kind of get consensus from the commission, and you're trying to develop, you set up an initial draft budget that you bring before the commission that then they approve. And you have veto votes and things like that, but it's a lot of working with other aspects of county government because, for example, the city mayor appoints the chief of police. The county mayor has to work directly with the sheriff, who's an independently elected constitutional officer. So it's a lot of convening and making sure that the charter is enforced and things like that, and having administrative oversight of things like the libraries and the health services and things like that.
That's really interesting, and I think helpful context for people as they're thinking about like what you can do. One of the things that you talk a lot about on the campaign trail is the cost of living, wanting to bring down the cost of housing, develop more and more affordable childcare options. What can you do on those issues unilaterally as mayor, and what will you be looking for support from the rest of the commission on, and how do you plan to do that as somebody who, at least from the outside looking in, wouldn't be aligned with a lot of the other county commissioners?
I mean, I think that it is possible to find more alignment, and we do have, 3 Democratic commissioners right now, and I have a good relationship with 3 of the Republican commissioners as well. But I think it has a lot to do with things like, we have this planning in place called Advance Knox for future development in the county that was spearheaded by the outgoing county mayor, Glenn Jacobs. And my opponent has voted against it and spoken against that plan. And I don't think it's perfect, but I think making sure that we are not throwing away millions of dollars spent and, years of effort expended on putting that plan together. I think it's a bad idea to throw that away. And I think that making sure that we have that and the Unified Development Ordinance, which is kind of in the works right now, making sure that those can continue to be adopted so that we're not operating off of, 20th century regulations. We're going to be able to work more closely with the developers and the business community and make sure that we are partnering with them to kind of steer development in a way that is going to produce more housing that people can afford, more price points, more variety of housing, but also, preventing any more reckless sprawl outward into the rural parts of the county, which is a huge concern for people. Depending on where you go in the county, people are more concerned with density in certain areas, but the main problem is that there just hasn't been infrastructure in place to support the development that's been happening, and we've just been kicking the can down the road for decades without bringing in any additional revenue. We've got a debt balloon service payment coming up, and we have a $5 billion deficit in infrastructure maintenance and repair. So we have to address all those kind of things. But those are the kind of priorities that you can set as the county mayor. And one of the ways that I've talked about doing that is having a 10-year capital improvement plan that's accessible to the public and available right out of the gate with my administration, making sure that we have a prioritized kind of understanding of where we're at with development, where we're at with the condition of our roads and bridges and things like that.
Yeah, so I know Tennessee is really bad about like government interference and preemption in municipal and county ordinances, even worse than Alabama. How do you anticipate that impacting your ability to govern?
It's something that you got to be concerned with here in Tennessee. It's it would be funny if it wasn't so bleak how much the, party of small government really likes to do as much as they can to control everything we do at the local and municipal level here in Tennessee. We had that happen with people fighting for community benefits agreements for major projects. Nashville just wants to legislate away our ability to do anything or make any decisions outside their purview. So, but I mean, I think that's where it's really important to just be as bipartisan as possible and find as much consensus as you can and work around those kind of things, and try to find, alternative methods to kind of get the same results that you're looking for. There's a lot of issues when it comes to procurement. With state regulation, it's very restrictive. For when we're having contracts for major projects, it's really difficult to build in provisions for things like community benefits or for labor standards. But, I think looking for other kind of ways at the local level with ordinances and working with the commission, I think there are, avenues for doing that.
Your campaign has really taken off in a way that I think would be surprising to people just looking at this race from the outside. And you've got Republicans so scared that they're running to national outlets like Newsmax, the New York Post, etc., to sort of try to bring in some national attention to this race. What about your campaign, do you think, has really resonated so much with people that it's starting to scare some of these, people outside the city or the city of Knoxville, the county of Knox?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm loving it. It's been great to see that because in the beginning, the tone shift has been striking because, in the beginning of this campaign, I had so many conversations with folks where even if they were sympathetic, it would be a good luck with that kind of conversation. And the opposition, it's just, did not even take it seriously at all. Like they just smugly take for granted their never-ending monopoly on power, just unending corruption. It's just going to keep going forever, and people are going to just be resigned to their fates because they think that, it's a red county, or whatever. But looking at the math, when I decided to run, I saw that the numbers were there, and it just took running an actual energizing campaign that gets people motivated to actually vote. And I think being a candidate who understands what everyday people are going through and, actually is talking about the real issues instead of UFOs or whatever kind of, distractions they're focused on, the Republicans. It's been really interesting to see that tone shift now where, yeah, they are scared. They are talking about me more than they talk about anything else, because they have nothing to offer. I mean, it's just broken promises and betrayal of the constituents who elected them, particularly with my opponent who, while sitting school board chair, went to Nashville and advocated for vouchers after our school board, unanimously voted a resolution to condemn vouchers and was opposed to it. So it's something that I think they should be scared because we're actually talking about doing something for everyday people and making county government work for everyday people, and they just don't have any kind of alternative to offer to that.
Tim Purchett is one of the people that's sort of a national figure, even though he is the congressman from Knoxville. But he's recently gotten involved in your race, made multiple videos about your candidacy, called you a dirtbag. I want to play this clip from a couple of nights ago at, I think it was, I don't know what kind of event it was at, but I want to play this clip for you and get your response.
People fought for that flag. People died for that flag. People died for what we have in this great country. And those dirtbags are trying to take it from us. Let me tell you something. They're not over the fence. They're in the gate. They're in Knox County. We have somebody that actually marched with this dirtbag Maduro. Thank goodness, thank God for Donald J. Trump. Took his ass out. They got the communists. And they holler youthful indiscretions, and then he turns around and says, he hollers useful indiscretion. Then he says, oh, wait a minute. I was marching for the working people down there. Well, dadgummit, what about the working people in the United States of America? We got Republicans up and down this ballot, Knox County especially. Please do not take this thing for granted. They're not on the other side of the fence, folks. They're within the gate. We got to take them out on election day.
I mean, first,
how do you respond to
immediate? I'm trying to be nice, but he is such a goober. I don't know how else to describe him in that video, but I mean, yeah, it's hilarious to me to hear him talking about, workers here in Tennessee, especially with the way that these same people talk about, the workers that I've supported here in Knoxville and in Knox County and the things that have happened with them. I mean, Tim Burchett is exactly the type of person who is the problem that, I'm running against. It's the pattern I'm running against. He's a career politician. He's used taxpayer dollars to enrich himself and his donors. He voted against releasing the Epstein files, and he's repeatedly put the interests of Israel and AIPAC over the interests of Americans, particularly American workers. These people do not care about workers or Americans. They're the most unpatriotic people you'll ever encounter. They're just out for their own greed. So I think that I'm going to continue to be amused hearing them, running scared the way they are right now. And I believe he did actually use the sentence "running scared." So at one point recently. So yeah, it's a fun thing to watch.
Tim Burchett, also worth knowing for people, has advocated for the privatization of the TVA. And in that clip, I just thought it was so interesting to try to, like, their whole campaign, it really seems like you said, they're trying to make it about you and make it as if you do not care about workers in Knox County. You don't have you don't know what you want to do for workers in Knox County. And they're not, there was no alternative proposed there. He was like, oh, why don't you care about workers here in America? As he offered no vision there. And neither has, in all the videos from Betsy Henderson that I'm seeing, it's always about you and all these other things, but not about actually, they don't want to actually discuss the policies that you're putting forward. I don't know. Do you feel like people are picking up on that?
Definitely. I mean, that's something I hear all the time. And, much to the Republican chagrin, I do have a lot of support still from moderate Republicans, and I'm going to continue to pursue their support because, they're, even if they were still kind of on the fence when they see my opponent just endlessly just talking about me every single day without ever presenting any kind of policy or vision, they're getting tired of it. I mean, there's just she's not putting it forward any kind of reason to vote for her. It's just about, trying to paint me as some kind of radical that, can't get along with others when my record shows that I bring people together and try to unite people around a positive vision of how we can, lift our community up. And they just have, a record of betraying that same community. So, it's interesting to watch that.
Yeah, sort of in line with that of them sort of painting you as this like omnipotent boogeyman. Your opponent used your last interview on this program to attack your support for McKay's bookstore workers when they unionized, implying somehow that you and the workers forced the store to close. Do you have a response to that?
Oh, this one is like, honestly, so this had been, I'd seen the game of telephone happening online where, some of the rumor mongers and gossip kind of right-wing spaces online they started off, just kind of taking one of the pictures of me supporting the McKay's workers that were picketing and kind of connecting me with the store closing down. And then it changed, I've seen people saying that I was their union rep and all these kind of things. When I had nothing to do with the bargaining or anything like that. I was just out there supporting them as president of the Central Labor Council. And honestly, I would have been, it's clear from my record that regardless of my title, I'm going to be out there supporting workers. But definitely, if I had to do it over again as president of the CLC, of course, I'm going to be out there supporting the workers that are fighting for better conditions and more, say over their work. But yeah, I mean, it was absurd to see my opponent actually adopting this rumor and putting it out herself and stamping it with her approval. I mean, and using the song "Which Side Are You On" for the video.
Wow.
But I had so many people that worked at McKay's reaching out to me that were just so infuriated that she was using their pain, which is a common theme, to her political benefit and trying to somehow, smear me for my support of them, which I was thankful, like in many cases with these kind of things, I was just appreciative of her putting out there exactly where she stands because, the company that was operating McKay's, they have multiple ongoing charges with the National Labor Relations Board. They have, in the 3 or 4 years that they were, bargaining with the McKay's workers, they had not even reached negotiations over wages yet. They were still in basic things like just cause, the first kind of clauses that you put in a collective bargaining agreement. So they were absolutely not, bargaining in good faith from day one. And then they sold the property out from under the workers that were working there. But, that is a condemnation of the greed of corporate America and not of the workers who are actually trying to make a difference. I mean, I'm proud to stand with them, and I would do it exactly the same way over again. And it's absurd to me that they would try to use this against me because it just makes them look just as evil as they are.
So both you and your opponent actually have taken a similar position on data centers. Can you tell us how you came to the place where you're at on that, and why you think you should be trusted over your opponent on this issue?
So the first part as to, my reasoning, I definitely do like to tell people, since I work for the Building Trades Council, I had to put a lot of thought into my stance on this because, my inclination as someone who lives in Knox County, of course, is I don't really want one in my backyard, one of these hyperscale data centers, but especially watching what happened with XAI in Memphis. That really informed my personal opinion, but also, just hearing from so many constituents that were really concerned about this. But, as a person who represents the building trades unions, typically we are agnostic about what we're building. We just want to make sure that things are built union and with good, building trades jobs, and people have access to apprenticeship and things like that. That's what we're concerned with. But, I definitely have not yet encountered a member of any of the building trades unions here in Knox County who was upset with the stance I took, which was that not a single square foot of Knox County should be devoted to a hyperscale AI data center. People are pretty opposed. The majority of people here in Knox County, I think, are opposed to it. There's other kinds of data centers, and there's also all these other kind of nuances like technologies that they could do to, recycle the water, or they could, do self-generation for the power. But I just don't see that happening here. If we just allow it to happen, it's going to be the worst possible version of it. So I'd rather just oppose it entirely. But as to why people should trust me on this issue versus my opponent, I mean, my opponent has campaigned on a platform that includes, a no growth stance against development. And then turned around and took tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from those same big developers. So I just think you can't trust a single thing that she says. I mean, she's just a political operative who has never had a job other than, the selected position as school board chair and working in DC, as like a swamp bureaucrat. And she, married to a corporate lobbyist, and is just doing the same thing those kind of people do. She's not going to have the interests of Knox County constituents in mind. She's going to be doing whatever will enrich her and her donors. That's what she's going to be focused on. So I'm here because I've got skin in the game. I'm a regular person. I rent here. I want to see things better for my community.
Something that was really surprising, you mentioned the fundraising, is that even though she's taking money from these big developers who are for some reason giving money to her, even though she's running on a really anti-development platform, ostensibly, is that you have raised, in the most recent quarter, you raised more money than she did on small donors, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, in the second quarter for that reporting period, we had a little over $100,000 raised with 1,006 individual contributions. And my opponent had 99,000 and some change, and it was from 98 individual contributions. And the bulk of that 98 was significantly large contributions. So a small number of that 98. So that paints the picture. The numbers don't lie. That tells me everything that I need to know. And I think that just looking at that, people can understand, there's grassroots momentum behind my campaign. There's real energy and excitement. Voter turnout is up here during early voting. People are, they're interested. They're watching what's happening, and it's just a county election, but it's getting national attention. But, just running and speaking on the economic reality that people are facing. It's got people invested. I mean, we've got people. My campaign is fueled by, first responders, retirees, students, everyday people, iron workers. It's not funded by these big developers and these family connections and personal loans in the tens of thousands from I don't have any wealth that's funding my campaign the way it is my opponents.
Yeah. One more issue that's national is coming to Knox County is these flock cameras. Where are you at on those?
Yeah, so for a while I was kind of trying to make sure I was taking an informed stance, because I've heard a lot of people that were very opposed to flock cameras, and my initial inclination, of course, as somebody who's concerned about mass surveillance and as particularly about third-party corporations having access to that kind of data, I wasn't very much in favor of it. But I definitely have really tried to support law enforcement, our sheriff's deputies as much as I can, and that's why I've taken stances on restoring the pension benefits that our sheriff's deputies are supposed to be getting and things like that. But I'd heard that there were concerns because law enforcement saw some of those people in law enforcement saw flock cameras as being to their benefit. But ultimately I've taken the stance that before we adopt any kind of agreement like that, there just needs to be more transparency. We need to have more understanding for constituents of how that data is going to be used, who's going to be able to access it, and those kind of things. So if we could get something like that, I would be open to a conversation to consider what the facts are and hear out law enforcement and what they think about it. But as it stands, I just think it's violating our constitutional rights, and I'm totally opposed to it.
Beau Hawk, candidate for Knox County Mayor. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we let you go?
Early voting, if you're in Knox County, it runs through August 1st. Get out there and vote. The voter turnout is up. This is going to be close, and that's not something we'd had to worry about in decades. So this could be decided, by a few votes. So, I mean, it's an exciting time to get out there and exercise your right. August 6th, I'd be honored to have your vote for county mayor, and I look forward to, serving our community and making sure that your voice is heard by county government.
Beau, appreciate your time. And for Betsy or one of her employees who are watching this, she's welcome to come on the program too. I left her a voicemail a couple of weeks ago for using our, when she used our video. So if you want to reach out and get her on the program, you have our contact info. Beau, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back to talk to some mental health therapists who beat the union busters. If you want a good-paying union job in construction or nuclear plant maintenance in North Alabama, then you need to talk to the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366. They're recruiting for jobs right now, so if you're interested, please apply online at liunalocal366.com or call their hiring hall at 256-383-2466. That's 256-383-2466. No experience is needed, and we offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs and benefits is our mission. Live better, work union. Local 366. Feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private, nonprofit, organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, filling in Whitney, Washington today. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Let's go ahead and play this quick clip 2 from Adam.
Adam Keller here. I'm sorry I couldn't be in the studio with Jacob today, but I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about something that's close to my heart and central to the work we're trying to do to build a powerful multiracial working class movement here in Alabama and beyond. I want to start by just being real with y'all about my own journey. I grew up right here in the South, raised in a conservative Southern Baptist tradition. You know, like a lot of folks who grew up in that environment, as I became a teenager and started looking at the world with my own eyes, I kind of fell out of it. To be honest, I was deeply turned off by religion for a long time. I saw a lot of dogma, a lot of judgment, and too often a theology that seemed to justify the status quo of inequality rather than challenging it. And I know I'm not alone in that. A lot of folks, particularly those on the left or in progressive spaces, have experienced real trauma, hurt, and alienation at the hands of religious institutions. That pain is real, and we have to acknowledge it. We can't just sweep it under the rug. But something happened to me personally as I started organizing. As I got more active in the movement, standing on picket lines, organizing in communities, and fighting for working people, I started meeting people of faith who lived a completely different reality than what I grew up around. I met pastors, lay leaders, and everyday congregants across a beautiful, diverse spectrum of traditions: Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and more. People who took seriously the radical core of their faith. I realized that the dominant, loud, conservative voices in the South don't have to own the narrative. There's a deep, rich, and revolutionary history of faith communities standing shoulder to shoulder with the oppressed. I've had the pleasure to get to know people who take seriously the words of Jesus, to stand with the least of these, to bring good news to the poor, to set the oppressed free, and to stand boldly against the forces of greed and empire. And, just look at the world we're living in right now. this late capitalist hellscape that's designed to isolate us. The bosses and the politicians who serve them, they don't just want to underpay us, they want to break our spirits. They want us to believe that we are entirely on our own. They want us to think that our worth is defined solely by our productivity for some multinational corporation. This system breeds a profound spiritual crisis, an epidemic of loneliness, alienation, anxiety, and despair. We cannot defeat a system that powerful with policy papers alone. We can't defeat it just by talking about dollars and cents. We need a mass movement. And a true mass movement must speak to the whole human being. It has to meet our material needs. Yes, we need union contracts, better wages, healthcare, and safer working conditions. It has to meet our political needs. We need real democracy and working class power. But it also must meet our spiritual needs. We need a movement rooted in love, justice, and solidarity. We need spaces where we can experience deep, meaningful community, where we remind each other that we are not alone, and where we affirm the inherent dignity of every single person, regardless of what the bosses or the bigots might say. When we sing Solidarity Forever on a picket line, I believe we are participating in a sacred act. We're saying your pain is my pain, your struggle is my struggle, and I've got your back. That's a spiritual truth as much as it is a material strategy. So, how do we turn this shared moral vision into real power on the ground here in Alabama and wherever you live? It's something that's obviously been on my mind a lot, and I'd love to hear from y'all. What are your thoughts about the intersection of faith and labor? You can give us a call, leave us a voicemail, or send us a text at 844-899-8857. How do we bring people together across different faith traditions and no faith traditions to advance the interest of working class folks? After all, the working class is the majority. We just don't act like a unified majority. How do we carry forward the work of Martin Luther King Jr. and the many, many others, known and unknown? Whatever spiritual journey I may be on or you may be on, at the end of the day, I do have faith that when the diverse working class majority unites around our common interest, we can do amazing things and we can win the better world we deserve. And I know I'm not alone in that faith. So I did want to share that there's some cool opportunities coming up right now for you to get involved. Whether you are a person of faith or a secular organizer, a union member, or just someone who wants to see a better world. First, I'm working with Alabama Arise to host a webinar called Faith, Labor, and Justice on Thursday, July 30th at noon Central. This is going to be a space to connect, discuss how we organize across faith communities, and share strategies for building these bridges. And I've got some really great guest speakers lined up. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. You can go to alarise.org to learn more and register. Second, a lot of us across the labor movement around the country are gearing up for the AFL-CIO's annual Labor in the Pulpit program over Labor Day weekend, which is coming up soon, September 5th through the 7th. Every year, the idea is to have union members, labor leaders, and working class advocates speak directly to congregations in churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples all across the nation. We bring the message of the labor movement directly to the places where our people gather. Whether it's a short speech at the service or something more informal like a Sunday school discussion, the point is to build relationships and remind folks about the dignity of labor and the sacrifices of our working class ancestors in the pursuit of justice, particularly around the Labor Day holiday. So if you want to speak at a service, if you want your congregation to host a speaker, or if you just want to help us coordinate, we do need your help. You can reach out to me. Let's get labor on the agenda in as many houses of worship as we can. And finally, I'm launching something called the Covenant of Faith and Labor. This is a powerful sign-on statement for faith leaders and faith groups to pledge their solidarity with the labor movement. It's a declaration that standing with workers is a moral obligation, and that we will not stand by while bosses exploit the people who keep our state running. You can find out more on my latest blog post for Alabama Arise, again at alarise.org. You can read the covenant and help us encourage congregations to sign on. Let's show the bosses in this state that when they fight Alabama workers, they aren't just fighting a union, they're fighting a massive coalition of conscience. Brothers and sisters, the road ahead is long, and the forces of greed we are up against are very entrenched. But when we combine the material power of organized labor with the moral and spiritual power of our diverse faith communities, we can move mountains and we can shake up the Southern status quo. Thank you for listening. Please register for the webinar on July 30th. Talk to your church about signing the covenant, and let's get ready for Labor Day. Jacob, I'll hand it back to you. Solidarity forever, y'all.
Workers at the Lynn Lake Mental Health Clinic in Minnesota just organized their union, but not without some union busters trying to stop them from doing that. Here to talk about that is Dana Vickland, a mental health therapist at Lynn Lake, Ashley Groshek, a marriage and family therapist at Lynn Lake, and Jacob Skall, an organizer for SEIU. Jacob, Dana, Ashley, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate y'all taking the time to join. I wanted to start with, Dana, could you talk to us about why you and your coworkers decided to organize a union? What were some of the things that you wanted to see change?
Yeah, so thank you. A lot of us started talking about common experiences that we were told were uncommon by leadership. Kind of the four main areas that we learned were fair compensation, clinical autonomy, accessible and affordable benefits, and protecting the integrity of our supervision as pre-licensed providers too. So something that was already an issue across our field, and the involvement of private equity made this a lot worse.
Ashley, what about you?
I've been in the field for a really long time, and so I've always thought that therapists needed protection and a need for a union. And so when I joined Lynn Lake in January and found out they were in the process of organizing, I was super excited to be a part of it. And I just agree wholeheartedly with our mission and our plan and our goals to make things better for all of us.
And was Lynn Lake bought by a private equity firm? Was that a big part of why things were getting worse there?
Yes, we learned that our practice was acquired by private equity back, I believe, in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things
that came a lot of changes? Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no. What were some of those changes?
Oh goodness, exactly what I was just talking about. The fair compensation. We received decreased commission rates. I believe I had a 10% commission cut. We saw decreased autonomy in our decision making and the way that we practice daily. Benefits became more expensive and less accessible, and the supervision program started being dismantled essentially.
When I came on in January, I had no idea that we were owned by private equity. It was presented that I was coming into a mental health clinic that existed as Lynn Lake, and so I had no idea that was even happening.
Right. Jacob, when these workers came to SEIU and said that they wanted to organize a union, there's not very many mental health unions in the country. How did SEIU respond?
We were very excited to take on mental health therapists. I would say recently we've seen a very big wave of sort of people, even though Lynn Lake isn't a nonprofit organization, we've been seeing like a big wave of like nonprofit type workers, mental health type workers approaching our union to try and organize. And we, want to organize thousands upon millions of more workers into the union. And this was a, new pathway for us to get into to expand, the power of our union and the power of healthcare workers in Minnesota.
That's awesome. So Dana, after the campaign went public, our partner Labor Lab found that your employer hired an anti-union consultant for $425 an hour. What were some of the first signs that y'all noticed that they had hired these guys?
Well, we don't know exactly when they were hired, though some of the initial signs, kind of retrospectively, were leadership's communication became really tepid. Their support was pretty ambiguous at first, and then when they were pressed to voluntarily recognize our union, their answers became vague and delayed, and this suggests to us that leadership was maybe coached on union busting. We learned about the consultant through an email that leadership sent out regarding an information meeting that they were going to hold.
And what was that information meeting like?
Ooh. I was only able to be present for the last bit of it. But what I heard was, I think, well, actually, Ashley, were you there?
I was.
I'll let you speak to that, actually.
Yeah, so initially, so we were, once we realized who we were, well, like the organization we were working with and the type of messaging that they would be using in the meeting, we shared that with everyone who was a supportive W-2 worker, and so we were well prepared. And so in the meeting, the LRI consultant wanted to talk about really what it was like to be in a union, what the union election was going to look like, and kind of just wanted to try to stick to the basics of a union election with the messaging of you're not gonna get what you want, or you might not get what you want, or things could get worse. That kind of messaging. It was very vague, but like very coded as well.
How did y'all respond to that in the meeting?
We were well organized, and so we were very much one of the things that I think I will pride our organizing committee on is we did a great job at inoculating our workers. And so once we realized who we were working with, we researched, we disseminated information, and we were just very well prepared when we went into that meeting.
And so after that, it's my understanding that because the meeting went so poorly for the union busters, y'all had done so much work inoculating your coworkers, letting them know what the union busters are going to say, that it didn't really have much effect, and they kind of left after that. Is that right, Dana?
Sorry, what was that? They left or left?
Yeah, they left. They kind of stopped interacting with you. Is that right?
I would say, I don't know that they left, but the presence of LRI in communications definitely stopped. Yeah.
Gotcha. Ashley, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
I think LRI was surprised that we were as informed as we were, and yeah.
What advice would you have for other workers who are going through union campaigns that are hiring these anti-union consultants?
I think first and foremost, what was really helpful in this campaign was connecting with our colleagues and staying connected, learning what's important to us and the people around us, and keeping that centered through everything. Keeping leadership in the dark as long as possible was really helpful too. So that meant keeping communication off of workplace platforms, being intentional with who and how we shared information on what we're working on. Knowing our workers' rights was really helpful too. I'm really grateful for SEIU's support. They taught us a lot. And yeah, I think all of this helped us get to our 93% support vote at the end.
That's incredible.
It also, I think a lot of the big bulk of our organizing, and right before we did the March on the Boss, was during Metro Surge, and so there's a lot of momentum also happening, and a lot of just organizing in general in the community. And so being able to build on that that momentum, I think, also really, really helped.
Right.
Because there was just a need for change.
Yeah. Ashley, final question here, and we've got like 20 seconds. Have you gotten any positive feedback or negative feedback from clients or the community?
Everyone is so proud. I don't think I've heard anything bad at all. Clients are super proud of us, community members. I kind of joke that we're legends.
That's incredible. Jacob, Dana, Ashley, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to getting to talking to y'all when you get your first contract.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for the first half of the program. We're going to take a break. We'll go into overtime, Facebook, YouTube, the Valley Labor Report if you want to continue listening. If you don't, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. All right, we're off the radio now. That's it for the first half of the program. We got a whole second half lined up. We're going to be talking to Matt Breunig about public ownership of AI. Lots of stuff. We'll take calls, 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, this is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, now broadcasting across the Mason-Dixon line in Minneapolis and Chicago. From the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people all over the country. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller. Filling in today, Whitney Washington. We appreciate you spending some time with us. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. If you want to call in, leave us a voicemail, send us a text. You can do the voicemail and the text at any time, day or night. No matter what, you can also send us a written message at tvlr.fm/contact. Adam recorded another clip about, this one about Public Schools Strong, a new campaign supporting public education. Let's play clip 3.
For those of you who don't know, before I wore the many hats I wear today, before I was on the radio with Jacob, I was a high school history teacher right here in Huntsville. Back in the fall of 2012, I thought I was living my dream. I was doing what I went to college for, what I poured my heart into, and what I thought would be my lifelong calling. But the reality of the classroom quickly collided with a harsh political landscape. In 2012, public education in Alabama, like much of the country, was under siege. We were navigating a hostile wave of corporate-style reforms and aggressive privatization efforts. It was the aftermath of the Great Recession, followed by the Tea Party Republican wave elections in 2010. The legislature was slashing budgets, cutting resources, and launching relentless attacks on public educators. As a young teacher, I looked around my school and saw the mounting stress on my coworkers, the shrinking resources for my students, and the anxiety gripping our families. And I kept waiting for someone to say something. I kept waiting for someone to do something. Eventually, the silence became too loud. I realized that if we wanted change, we couldn't wait to be saved. We had to save ourselves. I had to ask myself the hard questions. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? So I said, damn it, I guess I'm getting involved. And I got active. And that decision changed my life forever. Around that same time, a spark of inspiration flew down from the Midwest. In September 2012, the Chicago Teachers Union, led by bold rank-and-file reformers from the Caucus of Rank-and-File Educators, they went on a historic, successful strike. And they didn't just strike for their own pay. They struck for the school Chicago students deserved. They fought for win-win demands like smaller class sizes, social workers, and school libraries. For me, that was a light bulb moment. They showed us how we can actually win through deep community labor coalitions and through democratic militant workplace organizing from the bottom up. So I threw myself into our Huntsville local of the NEA, National Education Association, and eventually stepped out of the classroom and spent over 5 years representing public school staff full time, advocating for more than 1,500 cafeteria workers, custodians, librarians, teachers, and other education workers. And I learned through those battles that the real power to protect our schools doesn't lie in the State House or the superintendent's office. It lies in the hands of organized parents, workers, and community members. And that brings us to today. 14 years after I first stepped into that Huntsville classroom, this journey has brought me to a profound full circle moment. Right now in Alabama, as with so many places across the country, our public schools are facing a massive, coordinated, and incredibly well-funded effort to divide us. Wealthy interests want to pave the way for voucher-fueled privatization, starve our local schools of the resources they desperately need, and drive a wedge of distrust between educators and the families they serve. But we know the truth. Public schools are the beating heart of our communities. They're where our children learn to think critically, where families access essential services, and where diverse neighborhoods actually find common ground. I know real well that our public schools aren't perfect, but the answer is to make them better because working families deserve it. As an organizer, I know that educators and school support staff shouldn't have to carry the burden of defending these institutions all by themselves. When a teacher, a school secretary, or a bus driver stands up for what's right in a hostile environment, they can face real professional and personal risk, especially if they're standing alone. When we let our educators stand in isolation, the bosses and the politicians win. We have to break that isolation. We have to build collective power. That is exactly why Alabama Arise is excited to launch Public School Strong Alabama. This is a national, proven organizing model designed to build powerful multiracial parent-community educator solidarity directly at the school district level. It started with incredible success in North Carolina, spread to Tennessee, and is now sweeping the country. And we are officially launching the Alabama chapter. On Tuesday, August 4th at 6 o'clock Central, Alabama Arise is hosting the Public School Strong Alabama virtual statewide kickoff and orientation. This is going to be a Zoom meeting where we'll start to train parents, community allies, and rank and file school workers on how to organize together. Think about what's coming up. We have school board budget hearings taking place in August and September. We don't want our school workers standing alone at those podiums. We want to show up together to speak up for fully funded classrooms, fair wages for support staff, safe working and learning conditions, and inclusive environments for every single child in Alabama. We need to be asking questions about the impacts of state and federal policy on our local school districts as we see the Choose Act voucher system expand and the Trump administration proposing major cuts to federal education programs. Whether you're a parent who wants what's best for your kid, an educator tired of doing more with less, or a community member who believes that strong public schools are essential to a thriving democracy, there is a place for you in this movement. Let's stop waiting for someone else to say something. Let's just do it ourselves. Here's how you can plug in right now. You can register for the virtual kickoff. Make sure you're following Alabama Arise. Check out alarise.org. We'll also include it in our Last Week in Southern Labor newsletter, so make sure you're subscribed to that at tvlr.fm. Again, the kickoff is going to be on Zoom Tuesday, August 4th at 6 o'clock p.m. Central. But if you can't make it live, no problem. We have a PSS Alabama group online that you can join. And Public School Strong actually has a self-directed orientation that you could take at any time. You can go to publicschoolstrong.org to plug in there. And the next national organizing call for Public School Strong is going to be a week after our kickoff on Tuesday, August 11th at 6 o'clock p.m. Central. There will be a live new member orientation. Again, that's publicschoolstrong.org. Check it out. Make sure you're getting plugged in. Share it with folks that you know, because, the stakes are really high. We have to fight to save public education. Working people deserve good public schools in every neighborhood, and it's up to us to make this happen. Brothers and sisters, we have the power to write a different history for Alabama. Together, let's build the schools Alabama students deserve. Jacob, I'll hand it back to you. I know you've probably got some thoughts on how critical public schools are to the broader labor movement. Solidarity forever, y'all.
I do, Adam, have some thoughts, but we've got to keep the program moving. So soon we're going to be talking to Matt Breunig. I think if he's not in the Zoom, he'll be getting on soon. He is the founder of the People's Policy Project and proprietor of NLRB Edge, a really good website. And I'm really looking forward to talking to him about a bunch of different, like 3 different stories. One of them being about Bernie Sanders' AI policy. He has a recent article in Jacobin, The Criticisms of Bernie's AI Wealth Fund Idea Don't Hold Up, where he, really, like, surgically, kind of as he is wont to do. I mean, if you follow Matt Breunig at all, you know that this is kind of like his MO to really surgically take a look at, like, okay, exactly what is it that you're getting at here with the thing that you're putting forward into the debate, and let me see if that make sense at all. It will not surprise you that his position on that is that generally they don't make sense. That a lot of these people are just not really making sense when they oppose Bernie's AI wealth fund idea. So really excited to talk to him about that. Matt, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So like I was saying, Bernie has proposed for the government, the United States, to take a majority share of the largest AI companies in the U.S. Can you walk us through his reasoning and like what exactly it would do?
Sure, yeah. He gives a couple of reasons. The first one is a kind of what you might call a deservingness reason. These AI models are trained on essentially everything every human has ever produced and put into, some kind of recorded format. So all the words, all the code, all the, audio, video, whatever that they can ingest into these models. And these are things that we all produced. And so there is a kind of argument that says, well, if that is our input, then certainly we deserve some kind of compensation. And one practical way to go about that is to say half of whatever return you get on this should flow out to everyone publicly. Beyond that, there are arguments that this is going to cause a lot of labor market disruption. People will lose jobs, or they'll have to go from one job to another. And so obviously, if you have a nice revenue source coming into the public, that can help you smooth that out, whether with unemployment benefits or other kinds of public support. So yeah, that's the basic gist of it.
And what would it? How does he propose to take that majority ownership? Because one of the things that you talk about in your article is that people are acting as if he's proposing an expenditure of funds, and that's not exactly how he's proposing to do it.
Right, yeah. So it's not let's go buy half of the stocks. It's let's do a one-time tax that would be equal to half of the shares of the company. So rather than paying the tax in money, they would pay the tax in equity. So, depending on how you want to talk about it, it's kind of a free equity for the public. So not something that would be paid for. And this is important because there's other people. Some of the arguments that I've seen will say, well, this is a bad bet. These companies aren't going to succeed, et cetera. And they may not succeed. I wrote a piece in the argument saying, we don't know if we've got the Chinese models, we've got free models. Who knows who's going to win what? But if they don't succeed, that's okay, no problem. You didn't pay anything for the equity anyway. So it goes to zero. We're already at zero.
Right. Yeah. And he's proposing, is he proposing 50% or like 50% plus one so that the government has a majority share?
It was 50%. So, and then I know there's other proposals for 5%. But 50%, whether, plus one or not, I mean, it's an interesting question. Who's going to control the board? Anyone who has a 50% stake is going to be able to essentially make the decisions because the other 50% is not going to be 100% unified, right? They're going to be all splintered. So you're going to be able to get, the AFL will own at least one share, and you bring them over. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, so that's, I think that's good. And I think that all of those reasoning, like the reasons for the policy, I think they make a lot of sense. And it seems to me on an intuitive level that it's very difficult to argue against his proposal, but argue against his proposal some people have. And you responded to that in Jacobin. What were some of the big lines of argumentation that you saw?
Yeah, so you had the confusion about it being whether we're going to buy it or tax it. You have some people who just their view is you shouldn't have AI at all. They're just against the whole idea of large language models. And I don't agree with that myself, but if that's your view, obviously, well, I don't want state ownership, I don't want private ownership, I don't want it to exist at all. So that's understandable if that's your view. To me, I tend to think that it's very useful for productivity. I've used it a lot in stuff that I've done. So I'd like to see it used for the common good, for the social good. What's the line in Solidarity Forever? The wonders we have made. Standing outside. Let's bring them into control and use them for our own purposes. And then other than just sort of general, I'm just against AI across the board, you definitely have people who are against public ownership across the board. They may not state it that way, but essentially that's what the argument amounts to. And what's funny about that is you kind of get two flavors of it, and they're in contradiction with one another, right? So one flavor of it says, if the state owns half of the shares, then it won't want to like regulate the companies because, then that might hurt its bottom line. And if we're receiving 50% of its bottom line, then we want that bottom line to be as big as it can be. And then on the other flip side of it, people will say, well, if you own it, they'll kind of, they will no longer care about the bottom line, and they'll just do all sorts of destructive regulatory things because the government doesn't care. It's not its money anyway. So you get claims both that this will cause them to overregulate it and underregulate it. So depending on who you talk to and what their particular angle is, I tend to think from just overall state ownership, which we have, and even in the US, we don't talk about it too much, but we've got the Postal Service, we've got TVA, we've got Amtrak, and certainly on the state municipal level, we've got all sorts of utilities, water, electric, a lot of that is publicly owned. And sometimes it's mismanaged, sometimes it's not. I wouldn't say you see a consistent trend to how it's managed sort of regulatorily.
One of the thing that you close with in your article on the sort of evaluating the state of state-owned enterprises in the U.S. is that you say that, the state owning the enterprise gives the state a really unique ability to, as you say, have fine-tuned control over what exactly happens. You pointed to an issue that we covered actually when it was happening on our program, when the TVA was trying to outsource IT jobs. The Trump administration stopped that. The closure of a specific U.S. steel plant, the Trump administration also ironically stopped that. And that is something that you can't do if you're just regulating without owning, then or not having some sort of golden share like the government now does in U.S. Steel. It's just really difficult to do those small interventions in real time, and if you don't own it, if you're not actually the one making the decisions. And you say you conclude with a fast developing frontier sector like AI. Is a place where you might want to have some fine-tuned control.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, regulation, is can be good, it can be useful, but it's the kind of thing where you create a general rule. It usually takes, a year or so to get the rule done, and then it's challenged in the courts, and then you hope that their lawyers don't figure out how to get around the rule. And that's kind of the process there. And, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But what it's not good for is, like you said, something is happening fast developing in a particular company or a particular sector. You may not even be able to come up with a rule. Like with the TVA wanting to outsource its IT, I don't know if we could come up with a rule that we would want to implement that would apply across the whole economy about IT outsourcing, right? Maybe sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Different companies have to, and so you may not be able to have a generic rule that you can write clearly that would make sense. But if you own the TVA, you can say, well, I don't think TVA should be doing this, so let's go ahead and handle this with TVA. So that kind of company by company, real time, fine grain, we want to kind of alter this management decision. That's something that you're only going to get with ownership, for good or bad. Again, someone might say, well, that's the exact thing I don't want because I don't think the government's going to do it badly. I tend to think that, even with Trump, who, we tend to, he's more conservative. We tend to think he's not so labor friendly. I mean, the two big things he did was stop, this outsourcing and the closing of a steel plant. So even with that in a Republican administration, it's not like it's been horrible, that they had that kind of control.
Yeah, well, and the arguments about when people start saying, "Oh, well, do you want the Trump administration to do, X, Y, or Z?" That really is a fundamentally like anti-public service position, because I mean, Trump, if you're going to use that sort of phraseology, Trump is in charge of Medicare. Should we, privatize Medicare? I don't think that people that are making that argument would say yes to that, but it's exactly the same. Why would we want him in charge of all of medical care for seniors, but not trust him with this other thing, or his quote unquote administration? And so it really does feel sort of confused the way that people approach these propositions.
Yeah, I think they tend not to, everything you present, they kind of analyze it if it's a new, fresh thing no one's ever thought about before, that there's nothing to compare it to. So, you make the right move to say, okay, well, I wouldn't want Trump in charge of Anthropic. It's like Trump is in charge of the nuclear weapons. So, I mean, this is nothing compared to that. Another point I would make on this is it's a little anti-democratic, fundamentally, to kind of say, well, because in the alternative, who is making the decision? Like, I get, well, if we put the decision making in the hands of the public, that could go any number of ways. My guy might win, your lady might win, and it may not always go the way I want it to go. But it's not as if you say, well, I'm going to take it out of the public's hands, that there's no decision maker. There's some decision maker. And so who do you want that to be? Do you want it to be Sam Altman? Do you want it to be Mark Zuckerberg? Do you want it to be the head of U.S. Steel or whatever, right? Because that's the alternative. These unelected people who, have incentive to usually screw over workers,
Right. Yeah. It's a very similar sort of dynamic to when we hear people talking with respect to unions that, unions protect bad employees, as if, there aren't bad employees in non-union workplaces. I mean, like, have any of these people ever worked in a non-union workplace and they're always uniformly impressed by the job performance of everybody at every non-union workplace ever? I mean, it's a sort of silly thing. But in a union workplace, the workers, the workers have some say over how the discipline happens, and management has to justify the discipline. And sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes poor performers are quote unquote protected, and sometimes they're not. But that's, it's like a question of who has the power, and it's anti-democratic to suggest that the only person who should have the power is the people who either own the company or were appointed by the people that own the company, rather than the people who actually produce all of the wealth and all of the value that the company has.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think power and decision making is a good way to think about it, right? If you change who has the power or who has certain decision making authority, that does not guarantee, and you can, in fact, I'd say the opposite. You can be guaranteed that sometimes, no matter who you put the decision making authority on, they're going to make bad decisions, right? But the question is sort of like, on average, are we going to get better decisions if we have a union in the workplace versus a boss, or if we put it in the hands of a public decision maker versus a private decision maker? And, it might be the difference is 90% of the time it goes well and versus 60% of the time, or 90% of the time it's worker favoring versus 20% of the time. But we're dealing with percentages. Nothing is perfect. Sometimes unions are corrupt. Sometimes public is corrupt. Sometimes the union might keep someone on who maybe should go. Sometimes the union will push someone out that the boss wouldn't want to push out. Sometimes the boss keeps their son in, even though he doesn't do anything, So all these outcomes are possible regardless of what your precise structure is, but the precise structure is going to get you better average outcomes for certain structures than others.
Is there anything else on this that you think we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure that you impart to the audience?
No, I think that about covers it. It's very interesting to watch this unfold because, this technology is moving quickly, and there's also, you're always unclear where any given person you're talking to, like where when did they form their opinion, and has it been updated? So the only thing I would say is, there are some people who seem to have formed opinions in, say, 2022 or 2023 about the unreliability of this stuff, and like, oh, it's never going to catch on, it's garbage, it's hallucinating, and whatever. And I think that used to be true, and now it's much less true, right? The people really are using this. Usage is through the roof, and it seems to be pretty productive. So you at least want to start from that premise, I think, and then you got to figure out, well, what do we want to do from there?
I know that you don't really consider yourself like a political analyst. I mean, at least that's not how I perceive you. I perceive you as like a policy analyst, like a policy guy. But I want to ask you a political question on this. This strikes me as a proposal, especially while Trump is in power, that you could, like, if the right person was in the room with Trump and talked to him about this, I think that this is something that you could get the administration on board with. But do you think that does this have any legs, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, passing a bill, is really difficult. So, but Trump has managed to get companies to sort of donate shares. And another weird aspect of it is, especially Sam Altman, but to a lesser extent, the head of Anthropic, they seem to ideologically have certain views about how this should be shared, and they're worried about the impacts on the labor market and all this kind of stuff. Some of it's a little bit wacky, but it seems like for the time being, you have some of like the early founders who have weird philosophical views that tend towards saying, yes, this should be more public. And then you've got Trump, who's been taking equity stakes. He took a big equity stake in Intel recently, not him, but the government under him. And this has been happening through these sort of informal channels where he kind of leans on them or says, hey, if you give the government some equity, we'll allow you to export this or that. That's not always the best method, I wouldn't say, but he definitely likes that. He likes the idea of the government having stakes in things. So I don't think it's implausible that at least you get 5% of the OpenAI shares or something like that into a fund. I don't think that's enough, but that seems like something Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, is into, and Trump has done this already with like a dozen or so companies. And so I'd put it at least 50% that you at least get some equity in there. Probably not Bernie's 50% through a bill kind of thing, though.
All right. Well, hopefully we are able to see something there. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is we actually just talked to some workers who were subjected to a small anti-union campaign by these like anti-union consultants. And one of the most common ways that these union busters try to beat down union support is through websites that purport to tell facts about unions. You have interacted with one of these websites recently. Can you tell us what is the norm for kind of the messages that these websites put out during a union campaign?
Yeah, I mean, these websites are interesting because they are kind of heavy-handed, but they try not to be, because they want it to look a little more kind of like official. Hey, we're just giving you some information. And if they were just really hitting you over the head with like super anti-union stuff, like they maybe keep that for the threats and the captive audience meetings, it would maybe not have the effect. So it's kind of funny to read them because there's sort of these negative insinuations throughout, but nothing like way punching you in the face. But basically what the websites say, which is similar to what they'll tell you in the captive audience meetings, is the union is a business, and you are their customer, and you pay the business with your dues, and in exchange the union represents you or whatever. And then from there, here's all the dues you would pay. And actually unions can lie to you during the campaign and stuff like that. But that's the fundamental part of it, is the union is a business, and they're here to steal all your money, and you'll get nothing in return, basically.
Right. And so, you know, you're like sort of a techie guy, and you decided to help out free of charge some workers who were organizing by basically copying this format, but from a pro-union perspective, and sort of answering the same questions, but with a pro-union perspective. What campaign was that in support of, and what are some of the things that you said on your website?
Yeah, this was the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, which is in Seattle, Washington. Their advanced practice providers were organizing with the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, which I think is part of SEIU. The colors suggest that, but I didn't actually look closely. And yeah, I mean, what I did was I took their site, the exact format of their site, basically, and just went tit for tat. So, you know, they had this thing that was like your union dues, like here's how much it's going to cost you in union dues, and they had like a little calculator. And so I created a calculator that says your union wages, and I took, you know, some of the research about the union wage premium, and I made a little calculator where you could plug in, and it would just essentially multiply it by the union wage premium and say, hey, you know, on average, this is how much wages typically go up if you're unionized. And then on and on down the line. So they had a like a what a union actually does thing, and then, you know, they had sort of negative aspects of that. I just put positive aspects of it, and all this stuff is based on research, not just, you know. So union workplaces tend to be safer, right? Have less fatalities, less injuries, pay gaps between workers shrink. You have a contract. They usually have just cause protections. You're way more likely to have health care versus non-unionized workers. And then obviously that you earn more. And then they had this FAQ, frequently asked questions part, where they would say, you know, what is a labor union? And they would give this, you know, a labor union is a business and whatever. And then my response would be, a union is an organization of workers who join together to negotiate with their employer as a collective. And just kind of on and on down the line. So for every one of their questions where they had a kind of negative union slant, I would just rephrase it in a positive way. And yeah, threw that out there, and you know, it was fun. It was interesting to see what they would do. They did not. I mean, they responded pretty aggressively.
Yeah, they did not like it. How did they respond?
So I got a takedown notice. They sent. They hired. I guess I should say they hired one of these big law firms, Ballard Spahr. And you know, I don't know, these people are probably making $1,000 an hour or more typically for these kinds of law firms. They send a takedown notice to my my domain name service, my DNS, and then they end up sending a notice to my virtual private server, which is DigitalOcean. And then eventually I get all these like automated emails that's like, Ballard Spahr is saying that you're infringing on their copyright. You need to take their website down. Now, no one was in a position to take my website down except for me. I wasn't on like one of these platforms that is subject to a DMCA takedown notice like YouTube or whatever. It's my own virtual private server. So I get to decide whether I want to comply, and I decide not to comply. Or I should say this, actually. So this was, to take a step back, this is nonsense, right? Nothing that I had on the website violated any kind of copyright or trademark or anything like that. It's just a response to their website. They have their speech, I have my speech. But the goal is just to inundate me with this nonsense about how the colors look too similar and the Fred Hutch name, it looks, you know, it could confuse someone and whatever, right? And so, and just to make it difficult to comply with all this stuff and threaten to sue you if you don't fix these essentially design elements. Right. So they're not saying, hey, like it's illegal for me to say pro-union things to Fred Hutch workers. It's that my website is designed in a way that's infringing all sort of intellectual property rules. And so what I did was I just gave their letter, their takedown notice to Claude Code and just said, hey, just fix the website, do absolutely everything they asked you to do to clean it up and make it conform. And it just, you know, it's a little coding agent, and it went through and it fixed the website, and it changed all the colors, stripped everything out, made it just totally clear that this is an independent worker website. And yeah, and so I did that, and then I gave the law firm a call, and I was like, hey, I did everything you asked me to do. Let me know if you have any other issues. And then they did call me, and they were very skeptical of my story. Basically, they were trying to figure out. They had just asked me like, why are you doing this? Like, who are you? And I'm just like, I'm just a guy. I'm interested in doing this. And I'm sure like reasonably it sounds crazy. Like, what do you obviously the union put you up to this. Why are you involved? Whatever. But in my case it wasn't true. So we went back and forth. After that phone call, they sent me a threatening letter. They emailed it to me, and then they also like sent it to me by FedEx. This is a funny thing. I'm a lawyer. I guess we probably mentioned this, but I love this like weird lawyer intimidation stuff. Like you could just send me a letter in the post, in the USPS, but if we put it in like one of those FedEx like flat things, it looks like more official and service and looks more intimidating. So they sent me one of those. But after that, after I changed it initially, I didn't ever change it again. And although they sent me letters claiming they were going to sue me, they so far have not taken action on that.
And so does Seattle have, or does Washington have like SLAP? Do they have like SLAP laws where if they were to sue you that they could be penalized, or no? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I think they probably do, but I don't know. So maybe, and there also are even if you file really frivolous IP stuff, even within the IP law, you can hit them for attorney's fees. So that happened recently in the Chipotle workers. Was like Chipotle Workers United or whatever. They got sued by Chipotle, and the district court judge either did or almost, like in his opinion, he spent a lot of time on like, this is so frivolous that I think you should be awarded your attorney's fees. So, but it's the thing with this is I would just represent myself, like I really wouldn't. It's fun to be a lawyer because when people threaten you, at least if you feel comfortable with it, you can just be like, go ahead and sue me. I don't care. Like, I'll file my own stuff and I'll make a big deal of it. I'll get in the press. I'll get a bunch of attention for it, and it'll be good for me. So,
yeah. Well, like you said in your piece, people can go and read more about it. There's some more stuff that you haven't talked about here, but nlrbedge.com, you wrote about it. Like they know that this is silly, that it's not what they're saying is not real, right? I mean, they know that they're being ridiculous.
Absolutely, yeah. No, the move here, and I mean, I can appreciate it because I do similar, not like this. I do it for good, But
right.
The law. You find ways to use the law indirectly to achieve things you can't really achieve, right? So ultimately, they don't like my speech. I've got a First Amendment right, to speak, not to sound like that guy, but I do. We have First Amendment rights. I can say things about companies if I want, as long as they're not, maliciously untrue. I can say what I want. So they know, I can't be thrown into jail for saying stuff about unions in this company. But we have this other thing called intellectual property law. And what if I can leverage that to basically force you to shut up? And, we'll be really careful about it. Try not to run into anti-SLAP or whatever. But like, we'll take this thing, and because complying with what we're asking you to do is difficult, and because you're worried that we might sue you and you don't want to deal with that and you may not be able to afford that, we'll just use this unrelated law and the legal process to lean on you to get you to do something that you otherwise don't really legally have to do. That's the move, and it works all the time. I represent workers who have dealt with this over and over again, in other kinds of ways. So yeah, no, they know. And I mean, you can see it here because they sent all these threats. The phone call I had with them, I was basically like laughing at them, like, this is so ridiculous. And yet no lawsuit, and the lawsuit's not coming. they're never going to file a lawsuit, right? But the idea was that most people, if you put the kind of heat on them that they put on me, they're gonna fold. And not to say I'm exceptional in this regard, just I'm a lawyer. I'm, like I
Right.
don't have the same worries that other people have when someone's coming at you like this.
If they were to sue you and you represented yourself, would you be able to like set your own attorney's fees? So could you say like, oh, my labor's worth $1,000 an hour, you have to pay me that?
Now, the court, I think it's called the Lodestar formula or something like that. I learned this way back in law school, but it's set by the court, basically. So the court will kind of say, here's what the sort of going rate is, and here's what a reasonable amount of hours would have been to do this kind of work. And then so it basically would be set that way.
What a bummer. Well, the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about was you've got a new policy paper out at your think tank, the People's Policy Project, proposing a right to full-time work. What made you think of that as a policy proposal?
So I read Adele Waldman's book, which is titled Help Wanted. So it's a novel about working in a big box store. It's actually really funny. And your listeners might find it interesting. The storyline is really, they've got like this bad boss, but they're not unionizing, but they're trying to get rid of this bad boss, and their approach is to try to get him like promoted so that they don't have to deal with him. And so it's a kind of funny situation, and it's a great book. But I read this novel, and the author of that book, she wrote some things at the New York Times. I guess I should take a step back. She worked at a big box store for like 6 months to sort of research the novel, like people do. And so she kind of had some experience, like, and just sort of saw some things. And like one of the things she saw that seemed to be bigger than a lot of things people talk about, and that she felt like she hadn't really heard a lot about before, was people just can't get full-time hours, and the way she describes it is, we talk a lot about the minimum wage. We want the minimum wage up. We want the minimum wage up. But, the minimum wage, it has to be multiplied by the hours you work. Your pay is not just the minimum wage. It's also the hours you work. And if these companies are not allowing people to get full-time hours, on some levels, it doesn't really matter what the minimum wage is. They're still going to be poor and struggling and all that. And that, to her view, was what her coworkers were mostly concerned about, was like they just couldn't get hours. So anyway, she was writing some stuff about that, and I got in touch with her, and then, we just kind of went back and forth. She's the main author on the paper, and I'm like the second author. And, I kind of filled in the policy details. It's a sort of like, how could we make it so that these individuals could get full-time work? And then we wrote the paper, and we wrote a piece about it at the New York Times. And there's a member of Congress is supposedly working on a bill to introduce that proposal soon. So I don't know if you care about the specifics of the proposal, but basically, the idea is, under the Americans with Disability Act and workers' compensation laws and the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, there already are rules in place that do require companies to give people full-time work when they're coming back from a disability, like maybe a short-term disability, or they're coming back from being off for workers' comp, or coming back from FMLA leave. So we kind of already have this mechanism in place where people who come back from those kinds of leaves, or light duty work or whatever, they request to be returned to full-time work, and the employer has an obligation to accommodate that request, as long as it doesn't constitute an undue burden, or there's other kind of standards that have been used for like 50 years for, there's some exceptions. And so just kind of take that basic framework in those laws and just apply it more generally across, any workplace, I think, with 50 or more employees. And if you've been working there for 3 or more months, you can make this request, and they need to accommodate it in the same way they do for ADA and FMLA type requests.
Right. And so your law would base the proposal that you have would be to give, if somebody's working part-time and the employer has basically more work available before they hire somebody else part-time, they have to offer this person, or if this person wants full-time work, they have to give them full-time work before they bring on other people. Is that kind of how it would work?
Well, so that was one of the questions was, do we want to make it like that where you kind of have first dibs, bumping rights in a way. And there are some proposals that are kind of like that. That to our mind is very complicated, and there's a lot of wiggle room employers can use to kind of get out of that. So we kind of went more for just the hard, like, no, when you're coming back from ADA or FMLA, we don't say full-time hours are going to be given to you whenever we have more work. No, you are brought back to handle the full-time hours. So it's up to the employer to figure out how to manage its overall workforce, given the number of people who want full-time work at any given time. That's essentially our approach. So it could be that some employers say, well, look, we used to have 50 part-time employees. Now, after this law, quite a few of them have said, no, we want to be full-time. And so maybe we need to change it to where we have 30 full-time employees and then, 10 part-time employees or whatever to make the mix work. Right. So, and that is where sometimes people get uncomfortable because they're like, well, so some people might lose their job. And you're like, well, people lose their job all the time, but in the long run, what we'll get is these labor models that are more accommodating of full-time work, and which I think is essential for people to thrive.
Right. Matt Breunig, proprietor of NLRB Edge, founder of the People's Policy Project. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoyed talking to you as always.
Thank you.
Whitney.
Yeah. Hey.
You were reading some stuff about gig workers.
I was. So a new report was released just the other day from the Government Accountability Office, and this report was actually requested by Senator Bernie Sanders. And it revealed, they analyzed data from 11 states where nearly 1/5 of Americans reside, and it revealed that gig workers, so like workers at Amazon, rideshare drivers, Instacart drivers, are receiving a ton of assistance from Medicaid and SNAP. From these 11 states, nearly 12,000 Amazon workers are enrolled in food stamps. More than 11,000 are covered by Medicaid. And for those that don't know, in states that have expanded Medicaid, that means you are allowed to receive Medicaid benefits if you're working, if you're within 130% of the poverty line. So that's about, I think, ends up being about like $22,000 a year. So there's a lot of people that are working very hard that are not getting anything, and they are having to turn to the government for help. They also mention the number of FedEx staffers more than tripled in the 6 years since the FedEx staffers on Medicaid more than tripled in the 6 years since they previously released this report. Walmart is one of the top employers of workers receiving these benefits. They did this report in 2020, and in that time, the number of Amazon employees receiving food stamps and Medicaid tripled as well. So what we're seeing is a lot of very hard workers just not getting enough from companies that are making billions and billions of dollars off of their labor. And what's worse is that, in states that have expanded Medicaid, these workers at least have that option. Right. In a place like Alabama, or it also looked at Tennessee and I believe Arkansas, basically any states that are in the Valley Labor Report's coverage area, have not expanded Medicaid. And so if those people are making more than $3,000 a year, basically, they could not be eligible for Medicaid. So they are just out on their own and likely just have no health care.
Right. And, you know, I mean, funny enough, I think that a law giving people the option to demand full-time work would address a lot of this, because a lot of workers who are working at Walmart, their hourly rate of pay, if they were working full-time, might be almost enough to, you know, get them kind of what they need. If you're making $17, $18 an hour at Walmart, if you're able to work 40 hours a week and you're just one person in Alabama or in, you know, another low cost of living state, maybe that's enough for you. But if you're only able to get 10, 20, 25 hours a week, then because you're only working part-time, you don't have benefits, you don't have health care, you don't have retirement, you don't have leave, anything like that, then it makes you more and more likely to rely on these government programs.
Yeah, and, you know, obviously this goes back to the labor, but also that these companies are not being taxed properly, to the point that, you know, we're still having to the employees are still having to rely on these programs. And I think it's only going to get worse with more and more gig workers getting into that game. That have absolutely no protections and aren't considered employees at all. They're having to try to hobble together hours over the course of the week.
Right. We've got a labor story in Chicago from Unite Here, Local 1, I believe. And it's they represent LSG Sky Chefs workers. That company is owned by Aurelius Group, a private equity firm. And so this private equity group has launched a big refugee initiative that it says is, quote, dedicated to improving the living conditions and future prospects of immigrants and refugees. The firm states that it has directed its charitable giving towards multiple programs that benefit refugees and other migrants in the U.S. A majority of Sky Chef's workers in the U.S. are immigrants, and many of them are drivers. And the work of a catering truck driver requires them to load delivery trucks with heavy carts, navigate across busy airport tarmacs, approach planes with precision, and work on lifts high off the ground on cater flights. And many of these immigrants and refugees for this company, who's making this big deal about being pro-refugee, pro-immigrant, are reporting unsafe working conditions. They held a rally in front of the Aurelius Group's office in Chicago to demand better wages and working conditions for the Unite Here represented employees. Let's go ahead and play clip 3 here from that rally, or clip 4, I think it is. Clip 4 from the rally.
Thank you for being here. My name is Dan Abraham. I'm an organizing director with Unite Here Local 1. Unite Here represents about 10,000 Sky Chefs workers nationally, including about 1,400 Sky Chefs workers at O'Hare International Airport. Sky Chefs, which is now owned by Aurelius Group, is a German private equity firm. Sky Chef provides catering for major airlines across the United States. Aurelius Group has a program called the Aurelius Refugee Initiative, which is, quote, dedicated to improving the living conditions and future prospects of immigrants and refugees. Yet airline catering workers at Aurelius-owned Sky Chefs, many of whom are immigrants and refugees themselves, report serious health and safety issues on the job. 1 year ago this month, a worker in Minneapolis, assigned to work alone, was removing chocks intended to keep the truck from moving when it started to roll forward. The worker tried to stop it with his own body, but his leg was pulled under the truck and broken in several places. His arm was pinned by the front of the truck to the airplane's engine. He was rushed to the hospital, where he ultimately underwent multiple surgeries on his leg. Until a few months before this incident, there would have been a second worker inside the vehicle with their foot on the brake. In 2024, KC, an airline catering driver at Sky Chefs in Sacramento, fell 15 feet from an elevated truck and died from a traumatic head injury. This is unacceptable. We are here today, just down the street from Aurelius's Chicago office, with Sky Chef workers from around the country, to hear firsthand about their safety concerns and urge Aurelius to ensure that these workers' concerns are addressed.
They Unite Here in a press release they put forward some of the results of an internal survey among these workers. They say 70% of those workers said that catering trucks are, quote, somewhat unsafe or very unsafe. 53% reported that they did not have time to do their job safely, and 59% did not have enough time to follow all of the safety rules. During June of 2026, drivers at O'Hare reported several issues in catering trucks that under Sky Chef's own safety policies should have been taken out of service, including broken guardrails, which protect drivers from falling when their catering vehicle is lifted up 20 feet into the air to load and unload items onto an aircraft, and a missing windshield wiper. Workers also denounced an operating protocol called single operator catering, what Abrams was talking about there, in which one driver working alone does a job that was previously done by two drivers. Talked about that guy having to undergo multiple surgeries for his leg because of that new policy. There was one, there were several of these people spoke about their, about their working conditions and their sort of situations. One of them that I found particularly compelling was a Ukrainian refugee who talked about the dangers that he fled in Ukraine and how now he is in danger working in the United States. Let's play clip 5.
To introduce Leonid Orenstein, a driver for Sky Chef at San Francisco International Airport.
Hello everyone, my name is Leonid Orenstein. I have been driver for Sky Chefs at San Francisco International Airport for 8 years. As someone originally from Ukraine, whose immediate family and friends have been deeply affected by the brutal war, I was incredibly relieved when they found shelter and opportunity for a safe life in other parts of the world. However, looking at the current working conditions for Ukrainian refugees and immigrants employed by Sky Chefs here in the United States, I worry we all are still not safe. The very people who escaped the immediate threat of missiles and drones are now facing severe hazards at workplace that is supposed to protect them. The instance we have documented of unsafe, poorly maintained trucks presents a threat of serious injury or death to drivers, catering crews, and anyone in the surrounding tarmac area. Compounding this danger is companies' push to implement the single operator procedure SOP at some facilities. Forcing a single driver to navigate the tarmac, approach planes, and load heavy carts significantly increase the risk of accidents and critical mistakes. A danger we have already seen play out tragically in Minneapolis. What is the particular difference between being harmed by violence abroad and being injured or even killed by broken equipment and rushed safety protocols that force us to work faster, harder, and completely alone? Aurelius proudly champions a refugee initiative to support immigrants and refugees in Europe. But what about this of us working in the United States?
Unite Here Local 1 is calling on Aurelius and LSG Sky Chefs to roll back that single operator policy to make sure that workers are safe on the job, to increase their wages and to make sure that all workers have access to the high quality health care that they deserve.
It's of course, thinking about like the cyclospora outbreak we're having and like how crucial it is that like the people like handling our food, even if it's just like in delivery, like they need that time to make sure it doesn't spoil or go bad. These are things that like everyone should be invested in keeping these workers protected, because as we've seen, now hundreds or thousands of people are, terribly ill if we don't protect the workers handling our food.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's about it. I don't think I've got anything else. Whitney, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Adam talked about his couple of events on July 30th, the Faith and Labor conversation, as well as on August 4th, the kickoff for Public School Strong Alabama. Alabama Rise is having another event about the impact of Alabama policy on July 30th at 6 p.m. And, of course, the North Alabama Area Labor Council is co-sponsoring a labor history symposium at Auburn University on Friday, September 11th. Feel free to look that up. And if you are in possession of any sort of labor history ephemera, we would love for you to come down and share it.
That's it for the show this week, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next week.